Okay, so here I'm going to discuss a concept that I always call being controlled at half-mast by an inherent tendency. So what does that mean? Like, for example, the stimuli acme. Sexual pleasure and hedonistic tendency like that exists in animals too. Nature's way of inspiring reproduction. So it just is. It's neither positive nor negative, but we create this false duality to control it. So you realize that it's not a good thing, it's not a bad thing, it just exists, right? Just like anything else. It's good to do it in this way. It's like social engineering. So the problem that comes in is the fact that you're controlled at half-mast by an inherent. So it's not just that you simply do it or don't do it. There's a necessary element to control you. Like, oh, you love this one person, or like that kind of ego gratification falls absolute. So you take some inherent basic part of just life and you use it, you leverage it to control people, and people use it to control each other. They sort of sell out and they sort of exploit it. Like, you're missing the point, right? That instead of being a team in finality and saying, okay, let's be free, let's remove the need, let's reveal everything as conditional and then choose what to do and what we value, you instead strip away that freedom and say, no, let's reduce ourselves to a half-mast state and then compete over it as to how we're controlled by it. You can't just say, okay, it's just everything is just a part of inherent reality, tendencies that we have, we can choose to do or not do, but then so what? Instead of, oh no, we're going to place undue emphasis on it and then be controlled by it at half-mast. Like, you pose a false absolute to specify or to control it. So it's the sort of thing that seems positive at face value, like, oh, love and blah, blah, blah. But it's actually a bad thing because it means you're being controlled by it in a way that you would otherwise be free. Like, again, you could choose to engage in it or not, or do what you want. But this false absolute is like, oh, you must do it a certain way, you must do it with this one person, you must, obsess over it, base your whole life around it. So the common denominator in this concept is that you're not free. Pretend, okay, sex is just sex, it's no big deal, it just is, right? Animals do it too. Like, it wouldn't be a negative framing, it would just be a neutral framing, the objective reality. And then you would choose what you value in life in general, instead of, oh no, that's the meaning of life, is to base your life around half-mast hedonism, specifying the stimuli acme. So that's the problematic element. The same thing happens with half-mast zero-sum means, like half-mast hedonism that I talk about. Like false meaning and means, that you would say, well, the purpose of life is to have good food or something, but food is just a form of zero-sum sustenance. So how can that be the purpose of life is sustaining life? No, like, that would be the means to the end, but not the meaning for that, right? So again, people find false value in that too. Like, let's have the most hedonistic, pleasurable experience, or let's do the reaction relief fallacy of, we can make, this is the most common thing that we see in the modern day, like, all of human history and technology is for nothing more than this, to like just save time and to make it easier. So there's still no answer, like, oh, why do we do it? There's no answer to why we do it. There's a removal of the need to ask the question, like, well, if we make it easy and convenient enough, then we won't ask why we're doing it. We'll just make it so easy and effortless that we don't have to even think about doing it, right? That's the reaction relief concept. Like, you're taking the same non-choice zero-sum need that you have, or whatever tendency you have, and you're just saying, let's just make it so automatic and so effortless and so convenient that now we no longer have the existential question of as to why we're doing it or anything, right? But no, getting back to the core concept, it's like, everything would just be what I call is versus insistence, right? It just is, or do you insist upon it? So whenever you see that framing, it's kind of weird, right? People compete over it, that turns into an ego gratification thing. So like, let me use again the stimuli acme. Okay, I have orgies every day with hundreds of people, or I never have sex and I'm a minimalist and I choose not to do it, or all these possibilities. Either of those scenarios would invalidate the half-mast state where you pose a false absolute. Pretend you're not interested in sex at all, but you're still expected to base your whole life around it, or pretend you do that hedonistic exuberance I was talking about, like you have orgies all the time. So now what? Like either way, you're not basing your life around it and controlled by it. You would say, okay, sex is just sex, do what you got to do. But then what is the purpose of life outside of that, right? What actual value do you have? And the freedom from the conditional contrivance would be the absolutist measure to, like, say, right, minimize that as much as possible, whatever the constraints of society and so forth. Like, we don't really need those things, right? If you're free, max out your ability, your potential, yourself, right? But you are taught to kind of use one to justify the other. You say, well, you'll use your half-mass hedonistic tendency of the stimuli specification to rationalize being subject to conditional contrivance. Now, when I say conditional contrivance, what does that mean? It means, hey, how's it going? Dolby Doodle. When I say conditional contrivance, it means that when people are restricted or told what to do, whether by society or others, etc., it's conditional because it assumes something that doesn't apply to them, or that doesn't have to apply to them. So you say, oh, they must be negative, right? Therefore, they have to be controlled and restricted, or they have to, so if you solve that problem, like, okay, now they are good, now they won't do anything bad, so they don't need that, or, so it's used as a pretense to control people, but like, until you get to the point where you no longer need that, right? So that's why technology is a weird inverse here. Hey, how's it going? It's not used to free people, it's used to, it's not used to free people, it's used to control people all the more, or to overcompensate, I guess, for the fact that they are controlled. And so, I've been obsessed with this one song the last couple of days, this Misery, where it's like, the music is so upbeat, I didn't even know what the lyrics were, but they're like super dark, actually. By this Pub C's or whatever. Like, the beat was just like, it's almost like something out of a video game or something just weird. Like, it's upbeat, genuinely just upbeat, but then the lyrics are crazy. Let me actually make sure my thing is working properly. This is like the only kind of streaming I've done lately, just because I don't have time. So like, it's so weird that this is what it's devolved into. It works well enough. Like, again, I'm just talking while driving, but the thing is that, again, you're controlled at half-mass by an inherent, or you would be free. So just suppose for a second you were free. Suppose you were, you don't care about sex, you don't care about money, so now what purpose in life is there? You'd be... So a good example of stimuli acme preservation versus sacrificing the stimuli acme. Kids, they choose not to. The absolute is sacrificing doing it, but then they have to acquiesce to the fact that you're not sacrificing. If they're not, or if they're choosing something different, you're accountable to things that don't apply to you, right? Like, you might have done nothing wrong, but you're remove the need for it. Like, you'll tolerate it for now, but then people get swept up by that and say, no, we actually desire the conditional contrivance that has no basis, might be functionless, might inhibit things that are harmless, might project things that don't apply to you. You're still controlled and inhibited on the basis of them, but we'll vouch for it somehow because we have our half-mass bread and circuses overcompensation, or we have our stimuli acme, half-mass hedonism, specification of stimuli acme. So that element is telling. And here's one interesting thing too about social contrivance and the performative aspects that I talk about, is like, those things are necessary to maintain the illusion of a contrivance state. So if you're trying to reveal the contrivance state, you wouldn't need them, but you would still need to appeal to them. It's like, oh, you're not credible within the confines of contrivance, which requires a period of the emperor has no quotes fallacy. Your lack of ability to uphold the overcompensate for the absolute, not that it is an absolute. like even the way social contrivance is like it'll reinforce any empire, any state. So the state is established, so don't be the one to not socially reinforce it. Whatever that state is, it could be World War II Germany, it could be China right now. Don't be the odd one out that socially doesn't reinforce this. Like never accounting for what that state actually is, just because it's established and curated, or it's just not credible. You're just reinforcing something mindlessly. You would condemn the origin point you didn't choose. But some of these things are sometimes framed as like contrarian or something, but it's not a specific thing. It's like, you don't have a standard, so you're just mindlessly reacting. So it could be anything that you're mindlessly reacting to. So you don't really have any credibility. So you could do it, but you're just a mindless sheep going along with something that you didn't choose, that you wouldn't vouch for, overcompensating, coping with it. It's like, why is that less important, right? Why is the purpose of what you're doing and the thought and objectivity and standard behind it, as a thinking being that human beings are, why is that less important than the, excess is exuberance is zero-sum means? So that's what the absolutists would do. They would sacrifice the physical things, the benefits, the comfort, luxury, zero-sum means, for the purpose to make sure the measure is sound and consistent, true value basis, versus the opposite, that people would sell out zero-sum means, sell out the mind for physical benefit, convenience, pleasure, hedonism, bread and circuses. And so you could reveal the stimuli acme, and that would be my whole, the whole mission of an absolutist. And if you do that, there'll be some interesting projections, but the problem is that it's one of those, that's why is it humor? Why is humor is nothing more than cognitive dissonance, and it shows you a controlled state. So it's like, that's why sex and sexual words or profanity or funny or whatever, because people aren't comfortable with that because they're being controlled in a major way with it. Or like you look at the curated element of something that if you were to try to reveal the truth of something, you wouldn't be allowed to, so it wouldn't matter. It'd be like a situation where, so it creates a false outcome, because like whatever structure is established always leverages itself to curate those things. Like, so you'll be allowed to talk about anything besides that, about, revealing some truth that might contradict with that. Because like truth and objectivity never lead to a specific state. It's like, modern society is not backed up by truth, just like no specific society is. It's like there's some pseudo-functional basis, like, well, it's somewhat efficient, or it's somewhat, bread and circuses, but it's not an absolute, and it could be held accountable by that same standard. It could be done better. Your intent might be different, right? There's assuming of intent. False value of the longevity process versus and what else could I say with that? It's basically the fact that the conditional contrivance is kind of a tough concept, but it's like that would be the goal of the absolute. It's like, let's get it over with, remove the need. Now we don't have any basis to be controlled, or let's not require the things that would be the pretense that's used to control us. Like, we have to do this for this reason. So you would think, okay, maybe I don't need that anymore. So when you preserve the stimuli acme and overextend, that's one collective human currency almost to basis to control people. Because of how many people there are. So because of that rampant stimuli, acme, preservation, overextension, even with modern technology, you still feel controlled and you're not free in your mind and stuff because of the mass number of people. So that's always used as a basis to control them. There's a lot of social contrivance, ego gratification, reinforcement, regurgitation, but you don't value human life inherently not amalgam theory. You'd rather, this is the one trap of it, you would rather have children than take care of children who are already here and starving or whatever. So you don't really care about people. You're doing an egotistical self-value thing, or, that's the one layer that's often missing with everything is nuance. People don't see the nuance to something, they'll just see it, take it at face value. It's like, why does something appeal to them in the first place? Whether it be, like, let's say escapism, oh, it's just a way to pass the time, or blah, blah, blah. But it shows you they can't think or be objective or freely have a measure of something when they, they have to distract themselves, they have to cope with their cognitive dissonance, false absolute state. You would rather people think and be objective in those times instead of doing folly favoritism, something that could actually have impact on their life, or is concerned with truth and thought and objectivity, or even like people mindlessly vouch for a contrived state and they're not accountable for that, even though it's outward, whereas you would be accountable for neutrality or any variance. So, right, that's the signature of a false absolute. There's a lot of projection that people actually take it seriously. It could be the same process, but you have selective awareness based on the subversive, people's overcompensation for it, or social contrivance. And so the negative is you for not overcompensating for the process. Not that it could be a process that's flawed, even by its own measure, like just by being made aware of it. A measure, this is the half-mast kind of prognostication. If you have some measure or purpose in life, which people sometimes pose with false absolute, like God or religion or whatever, like there's some absolute value or purpose, then shouldn't you be non-stop every second of your life working towards that? Why would you ever stop? Why would you ever be at peace? Why would you ever watch entertainment or escapism? Or why would you do that? You have some absolute purpose, so do it absolutely, fully, all the time. And if there isn't a purpose like that, no measure, then your whole life is arbitrary and you're just doing random stuff and you have no credibility. But that's where the half-mast state doesn't make sense, because either you don't have credibility and you just do things in a half-mast, zero-sum way, non-basis self, zero-sum means, bread and circuses, half-mast hedonism, overcompensation, react relief, convenience, like all these things I've discussed a million times. So the point is that then what's the point of it beyond that? If you have if you have that, then what's the point? Because you don't have credibility. You can do that if you want. awareness of something, or whether it be just truth itself, like that would be seen as outward or strange because everything is selectively framed. So the collective mass of people is not credible because it's more about curating the outcome or selectively skewing it to some personal benefit. Like, you're not concerned with truth, you're concerned with this weird ego gratification hierarchy to rationalize your exuberant state that you're in. So it's very selfish. It'll be selective pretense of valuing people but not really valuing them. Yeah, like you'll have this curated outcome thing of like, well, if resources, physical state, all that is so heavily controlled, then that defines you and what you think. But it doesn't have to. Like, despite that, you can still have a measure and be like, oh, but look, you haven't done anything to that measure because, oh, you don't have the resources to do it because they're heavily controlled and monopolized. So why don't you hold it, instead of saying, oh, look, you haven't done that, why don't you hold accountable the people who have the resources to do that and prevent you from doing the same? And then the other aspect of that is the fact of, I hate bringing up the stimuli this much, but it's so relevant, is like, so you're controlled by that would just be a natural tendency otherwise. So it's like, you compare it to animals, at least animals don't obsess over it or base their whole life around it. This social engineering is a form of being sort of trained and tamed by your own ego gratification and stuff like that. Right, so the things that you value that way are a trick, because instead of being a part of life, it's something you have to latch on to and obsess over to rationalize the state in which you're controlled. And I mean, that's pretty much the whole concept. It's just, so like, pretend that didn't exist, pretend that wasn't there, right? Like sex doesn't exist, or it's not the purpose of life, it just is a part of life. So then what? Like, what would you do then? Because you might say that you base your whole life around it with your partner, your husband, wife. Like, isn't that kind of pathetic in a way? Like, people try to compete over some weird hierarchy. They're like, oh, look at, whatever it is. Right, like it's a big deal, which I guess nobody would understand exactly, but it has some interesting framing and overlap, like as if people actually take it seriously. What I would present to you as a limerent siphon, people are actually, oh no, they're actually serious, they're actually doing it for real. And that's the difference between the initial mind and the larger process, like entertainment even. Do you take entertainment seriously, like you actually value that and care about that, or do you realize, oh, it's just a way to distract you from your cognitive dissonance, that you're in a controlled subversive state, like bread and circuses, and it's not, has no impact on your life, subversive, that you could be thinking about something that could be truth or value or objectivity or have an, and even the impact is not like zero sum, like, oh, to make money or something. It's being concerned with truth and reality and objectivity and,